Well, welcome to another episode of Five Star Conversations, where we talk with hoteliers making a positive impact on the hospitality industry. And today I have the privilege of being joined by Zoran Pejović. Welcome, Zoran, coming to us all the way from the lovely Croatia.
Thank you for having me.
Zoran, what I'll do is I'll start off by reading your bio just so we can get to know you. You've got two versions, which I love, the professional version and then sort of the more colloquial modern version. So we'll get into that and then we'll come back and we'll start on the questions. So Zoran Pejović is a seasoned hospitality development and operations executive with over 2 decades of international experience, specializing in luxury and ultra luxury segments. With a career that bridges strategic, innovation, and operational excellence, Zoran has conceptualized, developed, opened, and operated some of the world's most distinguished hotels and restaurants. His leadership is defined by a multidisciplinary approach to solving industry challenges, a commitment to responsible business practices, and a deep belief in the power of education and human potential. In his current role as Chief Growth and Strategy Officer at Lošinj Hotels and Villas, Zoran oversees the strategic direction of the company's portfolio of properties on the Adriatic island of Vitality. He focuses on enhancing luxury and premium experiences, driving revenue growth, and positioning the company as an industry leader through responsible and innovative practices. This is how Zoran sums himself up. Some build hotels, some build ideas. I tried to do both. Born in Koto, based in Split, working on Lošinj, loyal to the Adriatic, the Mediterranean, and to intellectual integrity. Running growth and strategy at Lošinj Hotels and Villas, shaping storylines from concept to global comms. Along the way, helped to bring life to Messalina Resort on Hvar and Villa Nai 3.3 on Doki Otoko. Probably didn't get that right. You've traveled 100 plus countries, worked on 3 continents and across the seas. You're into cigars and conversations from hospitality to politics. Father of two, partner to a Swedish shield maiden. It doesn't buy free will, but it does buy good wine. And you're almost a Buddhist. I love that. How did you come up with that summary of yourself?
I was listening to Scott Galloway the other day, and he said something. If you can't sum your career in a paragraph, there is something wrong there. And it's almost like, because I also double in sales in a way, being in the growth segment. It's like what they would call an elevator pitch. You got to be
Yes.
able to succinctly say a few things about the product, or in this case, about yourself. And I thought that we have many faces, and it was sometimes we have these masks, and then, you have your work mask, and then you have your family mask, and then you have friends mask. I never believed in this, I never believed in these identities. I think it's just first of all, a flux. So I thought to myself, it has to be all there, it has to be, these are important things to me, my philosophical understanding of the world. I wouldn't call it an ideology, but philosophy of the world is an essential part of who I am and
Yep.
of how I see the life. I mean, I wouldn't call it spirituality, religiosity, but the understanding or the lens through which I look at the world, which is very much Buddhist, obviously shapes everything I do in the hospitality industry. So it would be stupid to imagine that at private I could be one and at business another.
Yep.
It's all interconnected. Hence, I kind of like just summed it up in their way to make it, I think, coherent. Hopefully.
It's coherent. It's coherent. It's a great summary. I'll have to create one for myself. I've got a one or two line. I'm not sure if I've mentioned, but I do these charity bike rides. So it talks about, having a heart for charity and not having a checkout time. Like it's a continual thing. There's no expiry date on that commitment to charity. Yeah, so I love it. Zoran, the first question I always like to ask every guest is, how did you get into hospitality? Is it a family thing? Is it something you planned? Often, a lot of my guests have found their way into hospitality by sheer accident, actually.
Yeah, so I fall into the second category.
Okay.
I come from a family of seafarers. All men in my family, they have come before me for the past few hundred years have been seafarers. And I come from a town where that's, you have these places where everybody does pretty much the same thing. That's how it used to be.
Yes.
Coal miners in the northern England or seafarers on the Mediterranean, right? But I also come from a country that was devoured by war in the
Mm.
90s. And somewhere in the mid 90s, I was sure I was going to be in the world of politics. And I actually entered the world of politics very, very young. And actually, yeah, this is something also that not many people know. And I was designated already as a politically exposed person in the late 90s, and then there was the NATO bombing or intervention, whatever you want to call it, of Serbia and Montenegro, where I was born on the coast of Montenegro at the same time. So I was thinking, of any way of getting out of there. And then USAID, which is famously dismantled right now, offered some scholarships. So I was one of the 10 students from Montenegro to get a scholarship to go and study abroad. And one of the options that they offered, well, they did not offer option to study philosophy or political science, something that I would have wanted at the time. They offered, what they thought that might be a future for the country in a way, hospitality, tourism, and hence I thought it doesn't matter. I'll do major in hospitality. I'll minor in philosophy or in related sciences, psychology, and so on. And then later I will make a switch. Well, I
Yeah.
never did. So I started working right after I started working right around 2000, and my first job in the States in Southern California was in 2003, and it was in a luxury resort in and I thought, well, actually, this is an interesting life, right? In this industry, we are at the intersection of, in a way, and this might sound, I think it doesn't matter how it sounds, but we are at the intersection of the rich and the poor, right? It's mostly people who are not so well off and often not so well educated, creating the circumstance for those who are more well off for them to have great time. And
Yep.
I realized that once you're in the management of it all, you're sitting in this triangle or quadrant of all of these things, the rich or very, very wealthy owners, rich guests, not so rich employees, partners, suppliers. And I thought this is a little world in its own. And being a general manager of a hotel, I realized even then is as complex as being a mayor of a town.
Yep.
I thought, yeah, no, actually, I think I can enjoy this career. I still many times throughout these last 25 years, I did think of perhaps switching the careers, but I think I enjoyed. I think it's been a good run.
I like that. Isn't that interesting? There's always a time for politics potentially, right? Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, I mean, he's had three lives. Yeah,
Yeah, he has. Yeah, and but he knew distinctly, like he was
yeah.
in a sense,
Three incredible lives. Yeah.
yeah, very planned. And so was your first job in the US part of sort of a not a gap year, but a work experience year, or was
Yeah.
that just yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there was because my university was based in upstate New York, and even though there was a division in Dubrovnik where I did much of my studies in Croatia, but what we called co-ops, right? They offered throughout the world, and
Mm,
I was offered an opportunity to move to Southern California for 18 months on back then. I think it was this work and travel visa. So it was so I took the opportunity. I thought it was a good program called Manager in Development that gave me a chance to see almost all aspects of the hotel
mm.
operation, luxury resort in a structured way. And it didn't take maybe 2 months before I gotten my first management position. So it was really early on in my career that I started managing people and processes, and So obviously I had some talent there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I love that also about hospitality because, as you said, it doesn't take very long. If you've got the passion for it, then it will be recognized and you can move fairly quickly throughout your career.
100%.
In your bio, I read as well that obviously the seafaring side came back into your career. You spent quite a while in the cruise industry with a lot of F&B experience. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually did two contracts, one with Silversea's cruises where I was a head sommelier, and then one with Celebrity Cruises where I was a restaurant manager. And being a restaurant manager on Celebrity Cruises is something completely different than being a restaurant manager on land. You're actually in charge of five restaurants, nearly 300 staff, 2,500 guests dining every day,
Yep.
four times, sometimes five times. So it still remains one of the most complex operations I have been ever involved with. And it took me around the world. Those experiences were very, very important. Like you noticed very well, those were heavily food and beverage
Hmm.
focused. And I thought, those experiences came at different parts in my career. So Silversea is rather early when I was still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it. Celebrity came later when after the big financial crisis, a lot of hotels because I was already in it, I was already working for Aman at that point, Aman Resorts for a number of years, and I was mostly focused on development and new properties. And the funny thing is, what people don't understand is that, for example, in hotel development, there is a delay because nobody signed new contracts in 2008 and 9. So we were not as much affected in 8 and 9 because we were finalizing projects from 6 and 7. But then there was almost no new openings in 10 and 11 because nobody signed new contracts then. So I was slightly concerned at that time that I wasn't sure where the things were gonna go. So I used this opportunity to jump on something that was, to be fair, well paid, very well paid job, and that gave me a chance to rethink things. And then realize that I prefer to stay on the ground, even though the pool of the seas is incredible. I don't believe that it's genetical, but it's certainly cultural where I come from, growing up with a father going away at seas every so often and seeing or hearing about this idea of the big open seas and everything that it meant throughout the history of humankind. As they
Yep.
say, living is not necessary, sailing is necessary, and that freedom of being at sea is something that still attracts me sometimes. I mean, I see a ship, I just want to board.
Interesting. Interesting. Some of those celebrity cruise ships, though, they're really more like a floating hotel because they
100%. Yeah.
they just I've cruised one of the celebrity cruises through the Adriatic before, and it was the most beautiful experience because it was calm. The restaurants were amazing. It was probably my children that were eating 5 times a day. Whenever they felt hungry, it's like, oh, we'll just go up and we'll just get something to eat.
There's always something available. Yeah.
Yeah, my son was on first name terms with the chef, and at that point in time, he was a picky eater, so he just had pasta but no sauce. And the chef knew this, or the serving chef, and then the executive chef's like, "Give him some sauce." He's like, "No, I know this kid. He doesn't do sauce." Like so they got to know them really well. Zoran, is there a memorable experience from the early part of your career, I suppose, that really cemented the love and convinced you that hospitality was for you?
There was a number of experiences back then that I recall as very formative. First of all, literally day three of my job at this hotel in Southern California, I was thrown into the bar because our head bartender at the time, a Jamaican older gentleman with a lot of great experience, was going home for a vacation, and the F&B director said, "Well, you're gonna take over while he's away." And
After
he
three
said,
days.
the way I joined him in the bar, and he just said, "Look, now we are in charge." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "Look at all of these people. We are in charge. We are here to create something for them. They are seeking something from us. And I thought, wow, that was so interesting. We are not here to serve them. We are not here to, answer to whatever whims or wishes they have. We are actually supposed to create an experience for them. But okay, this might be also slightly more American, where actually once you're a bartender, people do start telling you things about their lives that they would usually tell a priest or a shrink. So
Yep.
you do find yourself in a position of, wow, like I can actually help somebody out. So that actually, that position worked to create one of those early experiences where I learned that something would become later called experiential industry. It's what Joseph Pine defined as a transfer from service to experience, and then now from experience to transformational economy. And I think what we've done there was quite transformational. It's just that I didn't have the language at the time to
Yeah.
explain it. One of those evenings, I get a guest, a lady. She comes to the bar and absolutely upset at her husband. She wanted to go to the church and he took her to a wrong church. And she was so upset at his ignorance. She was, I think, if I remember correctly, she was a Catholic, and he took her to a Protestant, some Methodist church, and she was really upset. And then an hour later, she goes and he comes. He's telling me the same story, how he messed up, and he wishes if there was something that could be done. And a few of us get together, and at that time, or still, one of my best friends, he was working with me then in the hotel, and we say, how about if we create an experience where we bring them together? And he still is actually a very good guitar player and a singer. And we create this whole setup like a gazebo outside by the pool, put some rose petals, and he's coming, and this friend of mine, Matko, is behind. It sounds a little bit, romantic, cheesy, or whatever, but it was a beautiful moment. And he starts playing on the guitar behind the curtain, so nobody sees him. Put Your Head on My Shoulder by Elvis Presley. And at that moment you could see how you could affect people's lives.
Wow.
And we've done it there, and then without knowing what again later would be explained or transcribed or defined as peak moments, transformational moments, what a lot of hoteliers are looking for these days in order to distinguish themselves from the rest of the market. And this is again when I realized we are in a position to make people's lives better.
Yep.
So this is it, yeah.
That's really powerful. And it is. We are in a position to change people's lives, with that example or even similar ones. People stay at hotels for lots of different reasons. It might be a job they're going for and they're nervous and anxious about it and need to talk to somebody. It might be they're staying at a hotel near a hospital because they've got a family member who's very sick. And the way we treat people can make such a difference to that. It's just, yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? And it probably takes a certain mindset, though, and you were lucky enough to have that Jamaican bar manager sort of set that mindset in you from an early age, because too often it could be that, we are here just to do the job and to serve. You got from such an early perspective that we have the ability to change people's lives. I like that. I wanted to ask, what's probably the best piece of advice you've ever received, you believe, throughout your career, and who was that from, and why was it the best piece of advice?
So if we discount the people that are not alive, like the great thinkers of the past,
Yep.
I would probably say it. I mean, I've received so many good advice over the years, and a lot of it I only realized with the passing of time that it was good
Mm,
advice. Many of it wasn't even framed as an advice. It's only sometimes that you realize that somebody is telling you about themselves, but it could be understood as an advice. So again, back at the same, about the same time, we're talking similar 2000 to 2003. I have heard that there is an opportunity of Aman resorts coming to Adriatic. So first of all, still early ages of the modern communications. So I go online, find the website of Aman Resorts. It's some info email address in Singapore, and I say I'm this young student from Kotor, and I hear that there might be an Aman coming to near Dubrovnik. And now that I'm in this industry, I believe that that could be a good match, or I would like at least to have an opportunity to work for a brand like that. I already knew at the time that that was one of the, if not the most esteemed hotel brand in the
Mm.
world. And funnily enough, a few days later, I received an answer from a general manager that was assigned to the Adriatics, planning to open two properties, and her name is Sunny Lusted, actually an Australian general manager at the time, and she invited me to a coffee in Cavtat near Dubrovnik, and just based off this email, and we've had a coffee, met, and I did not make much of this, So it was then 2008, 5 years later, 6 years later, I'm on Silverseas cruises, and I receive an email from a friend saying, "Where you're at, there is a person trying to find you. Her name is Sunny Lusted, and she's been asking all over the country for you, and here is her email." So I reach out. At the time, we just touched the port of Piraeus, coming from Asia, and I was ready to go home after 9 months at seas. And I call her. I mean, funnily enough, I actually call her from one of those booths, the old school booths where you go into
Yep.
the port and there is actually a phone with a wire.
Yep.
So I call her up and she says, "Oh, where you're at? I would like to talk to you. We are actually opening in Aman. It's been 5, 6 years, but we are actually opening one, and I would like you on board."
Wow.
And I come to Montenegro. We have a discussion, and I join them. And I ask her, why did you take that meeting 5, 6 years ago with me that resulted? This is where you see how the world is interconnected and how it all works out in some serendipitous way. And she says, "Well, you gotta find, if you don't find 10, 15 minutes to meet people when they reach out, what's the point of it all?" And I don't know if that's how she continued living. I would like to believe so, but I have taken that as one of the mantras of my life.
Yeah.
I fail, obviously. Sometimes the life is just too intense and too busy.
Of course.
But when somebody writes a nice intro and they ask for a meeting, I say, "Listen, I'll find 15 minutes without any agenda, without any expectation." So I took that as an advice. You can't make yourself unreachable. You can't make yourself untouchable. You actually, the opposite. You have to make yourself accessible. People have to know that they can reach out, meet you, and you have to make yourself come down or to the side or whatever to find those 15 minutes. Otherwise, exactly what is the point? Why are we doing all of this? And this is what I tell now as an advice to many other people, especially the younger managers that fly rather quickly and say, book the meeting through my PA or something like that. It's like, easy with creating barriers. Open the doors, open the windows. It's easy to build walls.
Yeah, I think that's great advice from Sunny, and that gave us the opportunity to meet as well. And I think,
I true.
yeah, exactly, because it was a LinkedIn message to you
Yeah.
saying, this is who I am, this is what I'd like to do, and you gave me that 15 minutes. We had a chat, and it's like, let's do this. And I think it's important that we don't set ourselves, put ourselves on the pedestal as senior managers, because we want to instill that, we've got to give back to that younger generation, I think. And I've mentioned it before. There's a very senior gentleman here in Australia that when I was 20, 21, I was sort of a bit lost. I'd been in consulting, a little bit like the GFC. You mentioned 2008. The world had changed a little bit. I was thinking, some people were saying go this way, some people were going this way. And a previous general manager I'd worked for said, go and speak to David Sargent, who was heading a hotel group here. And I just brashly, called up and said, can I please come in and see you? And he gave me 45 minutes of his time. And a little bit like, as you said, it wasn't until many years later I realized how significant that was, just the time that he gave me, reset my career, and it's just amazing. And I could have been lost to hospitality, I suppose. That probably, could have gone down into another industry completely. But as a result, I stayed in hospitality.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's a
but
yeah,
that's how it works, right? It's all interconnected. It's all impermanent, but at the
yeah.
end of the day, it's all comes together in a way that we don't really control, you know.
Good point. And as you said that, you must have made a very good impression that Sandy kept in her mind that, when we open, you know, I want Zoran on the team. And obviously, if she's ringing round all of Croatia to hunt you down, then yeah, those 15 minutes were invaluable. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And another opportunity, another example of how those small things are the opportunity to change someone's life. I want to ask some questions about the industry itself. Is there an emerging trend in the industry that excites you? Could be anything. It might be tech, it might be where we are on the sustainability journey.
So the thing about trends is I get asked this question a lot.
Yep.
As you can imagine, any interview, podcast, panel, there's always a question about the trends. And I
Yes.
have tried in the past to think about this deeper. Like, okay, I have to have an answer to the trend. No, I actually don't believe that anymore.
Okay.
I think, we have five generations traveling together at the same time, not together, but at the same time,
Yep,
which has
that's a good
never
point.
been the case. Let's talk,
Yep.
at least let's look since the Second World War onwards. So for the past 80 years, you always had a dominant generation that was make decision making, and for majority of those 80 years, it has been baby boomers. And it was the case literally up until COVID. The boomers, 2018, 19, most of them were in the late 60s, perhaps just turning 70, but many of them still strongly in the workforce, decision makers. And you could recognize certain patterns there, certain patterns of behavior. Now it's impossible. Baby boomers are in the mid 70s or late 70s, definitely much less of decision makers. Millennials are a strong generation. Gen Xers are somewhere there in between. Gen Z. So we have all of these. That's number one. Number two, we have people traveling from all over the world. And often what gets explained as a trend is something that's concocted in the minds of a very few people in the very elite parts of, and when I mean elite, I don't mean financial elite, but more intellectual, cultural elite of the places like New York, London, Sydney,
Mm.
um, and then transcribed by the media. And then the world tries to live up to those trends. But
Yes.
there is a gap. And once you're deep in the industry, you start realizing that there is a huge gap. And not to bash too much the people who come up with these trends, but a lot of those trends fall into the category of what somebody much smarter than me calls luxury beliefs. It's a because there is a research to show that there is a big gap between what people say drives their decisions
Mm.
and how their decisions actually look like. So if you ask people, and this is again about the trends, for example, sustainability, is sustainability important for you? Yes. But then when you observe their actual decisions, there is almost none. So it's one of those things where it's really nice to talk about it, to say, yes, of course, I'm on the wagon of this, and yeah, the world has to change and this has to happen. But when it comes to executing, there is a difference. So yeah, that's what I think of the trends. I mean, there is definitely some things in technology that nobody can dispute
Yep.
dispute that, but I think our job as hoteliers, especially as developers, as people who conceptualize new hotels, new experiences, is really to think of how to design things across generations and geographies, and just maintaining that hospitality at the end of the day is, a human activity, and it has its own distinct
Mm.
features and making it responsible, obviously, to the local community and nature and all of that, but not too much worrying about the trends. Because what happens is sometimes afraid that a lot of businesses end up just proclaiming being part of something in their marketing and PR departments. You can call it greenwashing or this type of washing or whatever,
Yep.
but it's not actually. I don't believe it's any type of washing. It's just that it's so they are so inundated with how much is happening that sometimes they have to. Okay, just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get this certificate. Let's get this thing and then push it in the media. And this is going to make a difference. Tell people, listen, you have to figure out what really works for you. What resonates with the team, what resonates with the community that you're in. What works in New York doesn't work, or in Sydney doesn't work on a small island here in on the Adriatic, or in the Indian Ocean. I mean, what works on a, I don't know, Thursday Island or Whitsunday Island in
Yep.
Australia, obviously, or in Darwin up in the north doesn't work in Perth, or doesn't work on in Hobart. Like this has to be contextual, both to the geography, history, and culture of the community where it all takes place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, that's what I usually think of the trends when I think about it.
Interesting. You're quite right. I mean, trends come and go. A couple of years ago, we were all talking about, the multiverse and how that was going to, potentially disrupt the need for face-to-face, conferences because we just meet each other in the multiverse. Well, that's died and AI has taken over. But maybe it's not a trend. It's a fact. As you said, this is the first time that we've had 5 generations traveling, but also 5 generations potentially working within our industry. And that in itself, there's challenges and there's positive outcomes as a result. And when we spoke the other day, you were talking about a program to sort of bring the older generation or retirees into the hospitality industry to, bring that life experience in and use it for its benefits, really. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, 100%. So it's actually not as much retirees as people in their 40s and 50s. I think, first of all, the world is changing, or the world has changed, and the workplace has changed rapidly.
Mm,
Even when I started working 25 years ago, most of the people would retire around the age of 60, right?
yeah,
Generation before. And again, it was a lot due to the nature of a lot of jobs, that a lot of jobs in, let's say, in the 50s and 60s were outside, were very, very, very hard jobs, especially again for men, working in as a seafarers, working in mines. The lifespan was shorter, the careers or job, perhaps they would not consider it a career, but whatever they did to provide for the families was shorter. We are living now in a time where people live much longer and they have a chance to reinvent themselves several times through their lives in different careers. And what I've noticed, and I've seen this across countries, across cultures, I've seen especially men in their 40s and 50s a little bit lost with the amount of technology that's come our way, and being unable to keep up, but also a lot of the work that was considered fulfilling or satisfying disappearing. And
yeah,
I'm like, okay, guys, I think there is one industry that could benefit from your life experience, and often what comes with age, a bit of a wisdom and serenity and ability to survive in sometimes a very noisy and crazy situations that the hospitality can create. Because hospitality remains one of the few careers where human presence is the advantage,
yeah,
where the human connection is the advantage. So I definitely thought that we need to help those people find a career, new career paths, and especially almost push them into the hospitality industry. And a number of reasons. Again, you will recall that much of the jobs in hospitality industry across the world, across the Western world or developed world or whatever you want to call it, has been, especially the entry level, was done back in the day by students.
True.
And students did it as part of their, to make some extra money, and they wouldn't see necessarily that as a career. Again, here in the Mediterranean is not exactly that way. A lot of people see that as a career. I've heard too many times in places that are, people think of like I'm gonna do this until I find something better. So well, I don't know if I'm not sure if you're gonna find something better. Not because this is the other things. There are no other opportunities out there, but I think this could be a very good and rewarding career. Like we spoke about at the beginning, you
Yeah.
can actually influence people's lives, and if you're interested in people rather than in things, this is one of those ultimate options. So I do think, and then to just circle back to the idea of students and young people working in the industry, they actually don't like it. They don't like these days now the often the long hours, or we can't plan exactly for weeks in advance because you don't know how the business will look like. So there's
Yep.
what they don't like is the uncertainty.
Yep.
uh, I think there has always been, throughout the human existence, certain anxiety about uncertainty.
Mm.
But probably because of the amount of information and choice that the young people are presented with, I think the anxiety of uncertainty is probably greater than it has ever been, and I think they don't like it. So we have to look into different pools of people, and I think there is something fantastic about having people mature people being able to provide this experience for other people. So
Yeah. That's a really good point. You're right. There's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know. Occupancy can be 100% and things can run smoothly, or it can be, 50% and team member will be sick or something will be happening. And I think often some of the younger generation are less social in nature. We have a generation that grew up with devices to communicate rather than having to communicate face to face. So not everyone, but I think if you looked, there'd be a greater percentage of younger people now that are more comfortable using technology as a means of communicating rather than face to face. And I know, using my own children as an example, I often have to put them in situations where it's like, go and talk to the person in the shop and do this. It's like, I don't really want to do that. So, well, at some point in time, you do have to talk to people. It cannot all be done online as much as they would like it. So I think the idea of having people that are mature with those life experiences and the skills and being able to handle that level of uncertainty because of the maturity, I think it comes with that. I think it's a wonderful idea. I love it. It's a pretty deep question. I know that. What is your hope for our industry? I mean, and let me, I suppose, frame that a little bit. I mean, a couple of people that I've interviewed have concerns over, we need to make sure that we don't lose, obviously, the people aspect to it. We don't take on too much technology. Heaven forbid, we we don't want robots at the front desk and robots everywhere, because a lot of people would say, well, where is what? That's not hospitality. That you become a bed factory at that point in time. So that's one aspect, I suppose. The hope is that we continue to maintain that balance between technology and the human side of the industry.
I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I have gone back to history, try to understand the role of the first inns and the bars
Mm,
or pubs or places where people would get together. And it dates back really hundreds of years into the past, with some instances of it even a couple of thousands of years
yep,
into the past. Of what did these places provide? They were third places, right? They were, because usually you have a place of a home where you live,
yep,
and then you have a place of work.
yep,
And okay, historically, those two places tended also could have been in the same place. Because if you were living on a farm and working on your own farm, home
yep.
and
Very true. Yeah.
So these places, the early hospitality places, were the third places, and I think we need those third places more than ever, especially because what has happened is again, it has happened that for a lot of people, the home and work has become one place.
Yep.
So in many ways, the chances for people to meet each other have reduced.
Mm.
So these third places that hospitality offers, be it hotels, hotel lobbies, resorts, these are the second or third places. They are the only option where people can act or interact as humans between each other, between unknown people. So I actually think that our industry will only grow in importance with the growth of AI. I'm actually very positive about
Yep.
the role of hospitality industry, and I just I want what I would like is that we reclaim this industry as essential. I was quite upset, even though my levels of upset are quite wouldn't you wouldn't recognize when I'm upset, but it's in 2020 when we got locked down and many governments around the world said we are going to keep only the essential things open, and I was like,
Yep.
okay, so that means hospitality is non-essential. And I was like, okay, maybe for 2 weeks it could be non-essential,
Yep.
but it cannot be non-essential for 2 years. You're depriving people of the most basic need, and that's a need for social interaction.
Yeah.
And this is what in many places this is what holds communities together.
Yes.
You go to places where if people don't get a chance to get together, come together, the communities fall apart. And I really think that we will be one of the last remaining straws at which to hold the humanity together. Whether there will be a bifurcation in the industry, it is a chance that there will be a bifurcation, that one part of the industry will become super techy,
Yeah.
but it will serve a completely different need.
Yep.
So will there be a bad factory? Perhaps. But
Yep.
I must admit sometimes when I'm traveling around the world and I'm going to a airport hotel, I am not looking for anything but a bed.
Yep.
So if there was a way for me just scan my phone, get a key, go to the room, sleep, leave in the morning, it's fine. It's
Yep.
fine.
Yep. It's true.
Will that work out on its own and become even more automated and tech heavy? Sure. But I think the majority of it will be heavy
People
on the human
first.
touch.
Yeah. People first. Yep.
Yeah, people first.
Yep. I like
So
that.
I think we need to keep it human.
Yep.
We need to attract people who see service as a craft, and part of a craft, part an art. To tell people that this can be a very meaningful career, and that it
Yes.
bridge cultures and generations, and help protect actually environments and communities and cultures, and serve as a steward for maintenance of, or even an improvement of certain aspects of human existence. So I'm actually very hopeful for the industry.
I share your hope. And it's interesting because a number of guests have feel the same way that hospitality is that bastion that will remain people first, and it's something that people are looking for. So let's hope that our hopes are seeing. One last question I always like to ask, and that is, what advice would you give to somebody who is either just starting their career or is looking at hospitality as a career?
It's not going to go away.
Yep.
I have two kids, two boys, and older one is now 16, and I can see the uncertainty that they are facing. That there is a very good, or there's a huge chance.
Mm.
I don't know, I couldn't put the percentage now, but I remember even when I was studying 25 years ago, there was a UN study that showed back then that I don't know, 30 or 40% of the people who the things that they studied for would disappear throughout their lifetime.
Yep.
So this is a quarter of a century ago.
Yeah.
I must imagine that the percentage is much higher now.
Mm.
So, it's a tricky part. We are teaching kids what to do in 20 years based on the best practices from 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? So this gap of 40 years maybe was not so problematic in the 50s or the 30s or 1880s,
Yeah.
but God, it's problematic today.
Yeah. With the rate of
And you
change.
see,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you see one of the industries that I think if you were really good at it 20 years ago, I think you would be very good at it in 20 years from now. It's a hospitality industry.
Yeah.
So probably there would be if you're looking for certainty and you are and afraid that whatever you embark on will not disappear throughout your lifetime, I think hospitality is definitely one of those industries, and I think that would be the advice. Secondly, I think the opportunity for people to learn about nice things in life in hospitality is immense. I've come from a war-stricken country, poverty of the 90s that we faced due to the sanctions. And, I ended up learning about
Yeah.
fine cigars, staying at the best hotels around the world, learning all the fine things out there. And if it was not for this industry, I don't think I would be able to afford to try and experience all of these things. And I think that has enriched my life beyond comprehension. So it's an industry. It's also an industry for the curious minds.
Mm.
It's and again, it has been maligned. Our industry has been so maligned over the past 10, 15 years. It's quite, sometimes it really would make me sad. It was like, oh, people who travel destroy the planet, flight shaming, over
Yes.
tourism. But then COVID came, and then it's like, oh, actually, the places where COVID spread is the restaurants, and we have to stop people from meeting each other. And it's so easy because our industry is made up of small businesses.
Mm.
So, despite the fact that we have some big names in the industry, and especially hotel industry, the five mega brands, we
Yep.
don't have we are not like a big tech where you have, five, six huge companies that influence governments around the world, or the
True.
big oil, same way with the big oil, or with the
Yep.
big, back in the day with the big tobacco, or you could argue even today with the big pharma. I mean, these are industries that have lobbyists, that lawyers that spend more money on influencing the governments around the world than on anything else.
Mm.
I think we have that in travel and tourism and hospitality, because we are made up of and the funny thing is that we represent about 10% of the global GDP, and about 11% of all the workforce in the world is in travel and tourism. And yet it's an industry that's quite maligned. You would think sometimes, like, yeah, oh, big coal, yeah, absolutely an amazing industry compared to tourism. It's like that big oil, of course, their impact on the world is insignificant compared to my aunt traveling across the world to see a different culture, eat different cuisine. No, stay at home because you are. So do I think that there is some merit to these comments? Yes. But we all have to put everything into the context.
Yep.
This is I may be taking here a slightly different path to this conversation now, but this is where I think that our industry will regain some of that importance, and that the world will understand that there are benefits. There are for sure some negative aspects of the industry, but there is a negative aspect to everything we do. Like this concept of interconnectedness, and we spoke. You mentioned at the beginning, and I wrote in my bio, almost a Buddhist.
Almost Buddhist.
But,
Yeah.
everything is impermanent, yet everything is interconnected. So this is and once we accept this impermanence, interconnectedness, and the selfless nature of all phenomena, then we also start taking ourselves less seriously, and just start enjoying gliding through life
Yep.
in a way, because we are also at the end of the day just the spectators in the theaters of our own minds, and not these puppet masters that we sometimes think we are. So yeah, not to go too much into the philosophy of it all, but I would like to see a lot of young people enter this industry because I think it's rewarding, be here to stay, and it's for the curious ones, and for those who are interested in people.
Yep, I love that. And as we circle back, I think you're reiterating in some respects, Sunny's point is, don't ever get to the point where you consider yourself to be too important. As you said, we're not the puppet masters. We're all here in the same way, and respect people, and make time, and live life to the fullest.
Yeah,
I love it. Zoran, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
thank you. It's been a pleasure.